Couple of takeaways from spring. I want to start kind of on the offensive side of the ball, and if Nebraska wants to get to where they need to be, we always talk about the quarterback play, and we know what's going on with Coach Raiola, Coach Satterfield, Coach Holgerson, Coach Barthel, and now Coach Shorts and his crew. For you, can you talk about the progress that Dylan Raiola has to make without talking about Coach Holgerson?
No, I think they're intertwined in that conversation, and the good thing is it really does feel genuine that the chemistry um, has really grown through these months as they've gotten to know each other better, and you hear the stories of sometimes Dylan's kind of waiting for the player. He's like wants a certain play, and it comes into his head that exactly what he's thinking. Like they're on the same wavelength. And I know some people can roll their eyes and say, "Oh, that's spring press conference type of stuff," but I could tell even after the first game at USC last year in the post game, um, you could see sort of the flicker in Dylan's eyes, like let's go, let's see what's going to happen this next week. Like he liked the rhythm they had that first day where they didn't have hardly any runway together, and that was the game people might remember. He made sort of a bold prediction they were going to win the next week. At the time, that was bold. They've been struggling, and just felt the offense was going to take off. And sure enough, they had that 44-point game. So it does feel like he there's a real comfort level. He mentioned that the thing Dana does really well is he just plays to what the personnel, their strengths, and knows how to accent those things. And also, just as importantly, how to turn away from the stuff that's a weak spot. And so together that can be a powerful combination. But yeah, I think they're definitely, those two are mixed together. And I think it's an OC who's going to give them a lot of high percentage throws to make when there's those opportunities. And of course, there's going to be those moments where Dylan has to fit one in and make that big time play. We all know that, like, even last year, we can think of 4 or 5 throws that, man, you wish you had that one back. It can alter the course. It can change 2 games, if you hit on a couple of them. So there's going to be those moments too, where it's just that quarterback, and can he put that throw on the money on that one, explosive play that's waiting to be had.
That's interesting, BC. We had this discussion starting a couple weeks ago about Dylan's improvement versus having Dana in the room full time, and sort of which mattered most versus just having Dana there. I made the case that it would the offense would improve even if Dylan hadn't gotten any better. Not saying that he hasn't, but one of our listeners gave an analogy of, okay, if Dylan is a wheel and the OC Dana Holgerson is the hill. That my point was, if the hill is steeper, that the wheel's rolling down, the wheel doesn't have to be any smoother and it'll go faster still. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I just feel like
I'm not saying the wheel isn't smoother, but the hill is definitely steeper.
Sure.
Yeah, I can go with that. I mean, if you go to the last 3 or 4 games, I just think of a few plays in particular where it's like, think of the last touchdown at the Pinstripe Bowl. It was just a little passing the flat out to Emmett Johnson, and it's a big time confidence play for your quarterback, and it's an OC getting you in the right play at the right moment. It was a layup, and there were several plays like that down the stretch where Dylan had some layups in big spots and he converted them. But you also credit the OC for, finding that play in that moment. Like the Wisconsin game, there was a drive early third quarter. I thought it was their best drive of the season, where they had the Badgers on ice skates, and there was another little pass to Emmett, and it's just a little simple deal, and the whole defense is going one way. Emmett's going down the right sideline, 35 yards like that. Looks good on Dylan's stats. That boosts your confidence, and that helps you make a bigger throw later. That's a tougher throw. So I just think when you can find that sort of, I guess, touch as a play caller, It elevates your quarterback, like his thinking and his mojo going into further plays down, within that game and within the season. So hopefully there's just more of that on display as we go forward.
BC, this is the first time I think universally, and I don't know what it is. I just, so you can agree or disagree. It seems like universally everybody's pretty excited about the offensive line. So number one, do you kind of agree with that, and where did it come from? Number two, how many guys in your head now are you thinking that Nebraska could actually play without having to do any sort of stretches?
I'm optimistic about the O-line. It was
Did you get that from listening to the staff all spring?
Yeah. I mean, midway through the spring, it was after one of the scrimmages, I believe, Rule highlighted them, and a couple other times they came up. It felt like Elijah Pritchett was coming on in a good way and was developing, and I think getting accustomed to his surroundings too. It's not easy, but I think he's been really locked in on the details and those little technique things that are actually the big things. And then I just think like a guy like Rocco Spindler's fit really well with his personality. I like the stuff I heard about Rocco that, a lot of guys like him, it seems like it would be easy to be kind of cocky and kind of have your chest puffed out because you were just in a national championship game. And it's like, we do things a certain way. This is how we did it here. Why isn't it done here that way in Nebraska? And it doesn't seem like that from what we heard was Rocco's personality at all. He would give some feedback, but he would listen and take it in and see, okay, this is how this goes here, and just adapted really well. So I feel good about those two additions. I feel better about Pritchett post-spring than I did pre-spring, I guess. Like from what I heard, it just felt like he was tracking well, and he has to keep doing that, but I'm encouraged from what I heard. So that's a big deal because if he can lock down that left spot, it means everything. And then they got a lot of options. I mean, right tackle, I know Lutovsky's kind of a name that is put out there a lot, but, I know Tyler Kanak had a good spring, and you still got Teddy, and you could do something with Turner inside maybe. There's enough names, enough bodies who are third-year type guys and beyond, some guys fifth-year guys, fourth-year guys, that you do expect them to be solid. And when you go left to right and you say, what if it's like Pritchett, Corcoran, Evans, Spindler, Lutovsky? That's a lot of football. That's a lot of snaps. That's definitely like an O-line that you say, okay, let's go in October. Let's go see what they do against Michigan. Those guys have played a lot of big reps. So on paper, I like it.
BC, it's interesting because you left out some guys that played a lot last year, and we didn't bring up, the Grant Segrin transfer who got a Washington State offer yesterday. Did that register with you at all, him leaving, or did that sort of make sense?
It makes sense because I think he's a really good player, and the staff did too. I mean, Rule said like if he can get that mindset, like, hey, I'm not a walk-on. I'm a dude who belongs here and could play with any of these guys. He's going to be really good. And, in his situation, he probably looked and saw, a bunch of guys sort of in the way at this moment. And there is an opportunity probably for him to go elsewhere and play. The one thing I would say, though, is guys, I think in that room are generally pretty patient. It seems like O-linemen, for the most part, are willing to buy into the idea, which is true. Like, it's going to take until my third year or so until I can take off a lot of times. And if you look at Nebraska's room, I hope guys see the road is there for them to play pretty soon if they have a good development year, because there are like Lutovsky's a senior, Corcoran's a senior, Prohaska, Spindler. Let's see what happens with Elijah Pritchett and his, if he's around for multiple years or not. But there's 4 or 5 guys that are not going to be here next season. So there should be guys like Grant Bricks, Preston Tamua, some of these guys who are looking at it like, my turn's there. I just got to keep going at this. And if I keep getting better this season, even if I'm not on the first line, next year is when it could really take off for me. So even though there is sort of a logjam at some spots now, hopefully guys see that's not the way it's going to be for multiple years.
BC, have you thought at all about why you think the mentality is different on the offensive line in terms of being a little bit more patient? Is it because we often talk about how offensive linemen are sort of just wired differently, and I do believe that. But I also wonder if, like, when you're in the trenches and you aren't physically ready, it's very apparent because you're kind of just getting whooped.
That's what I think, Ravi. I think it's so easy to see when you get there, like you're 18 or 19. Some guys, there's that rare exception that actually can do it, or they fit in pretty well. And that's why I thought Gunnar Gatula, and I haven't meant to just leave him out of the conversation. I thought it was pretty impressive what he did last year, honestly, for as young as he is in his career. And, going into spring, he would have been like the fourth tackle, suddenly starting games. And we weren't just talking about him as an eyesore or anything throughout the year. So I thought that was a good step for him. So let's see what he can do too. But I do think it's a position where it's pretty evident on the tape, or just like after a rep, like, I got to keep getting stronger. This is what it's going to take. I see like Rocco Spindler over here. Okay, that's me in 3 or 4 years. I can be that, but I'm not that yet. And that's why a guy like Rocco is great for the room too, because Rocco didn't play right away at Notre Dame. He was a 4-star guy who had to bide his time, and he's had sort of an up and down road, and it hasn't always just been exactly as he'd wanted. And so I think sometimes those older guys are really willing to say, like, just hang in there, man. I've been in the same spot. This is the way it works as a lineman for the most part. You just got to keep building up. And I think a lot of guys believe it.
BC, if I want to flip over to the defensive side of the ball, or excuse me, special teams, because I feel like we've talked offense, we've talked defense. We know what we think Coach Ekeler's prowess is, but we haven't had a chance to see it like full go. We've seen a couple guys enter the portal from special teams. Do you kind of like the way it's been kind of talked about? We have, again, hard because you haven't seen, but are you optimistic, or is it simply, well, DB, anything's better than it was than a year ago?
No, I'm excited about it because I'm ultra excited about Mike Ekeler, and I've said this before, and this is hype, call it hype, whatever. I just think it's true. His resume at Tennessee the last 4 or 5 years was as good as like any assistant that I've seen Nebraska bring in his recent resume. I mean, it's not just like, oh yeah, they had a top returner in the SEC. They had top returners nationally. They were great at pinning teams deep. They were good in like all the statistics. And so that was so well-rounded that I'm just hopeful that at least a couple of those areas are going to really kick up for Nebraska. You know what I'm most interested in, though, is, and this is hard for the media. You might have a better idea because you know some stuff that we don't, but to get a grip on like who the personnel and who those guys are who are really carving out a role. Like, I hope Nebraska has a couple names on coverage this year that like become household names in the state because of that.
It used to be a thing, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like the guy who goes down as just a maniac and, tears stuff up, knocks a ball loose one time. That was definitely a thing.
What's his name that almost caught a case in Stillwater? Eric Martin.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just a maniac. Ed Cunningham didn't like him, but I did. Ed Cunningham wanted him out, out of the country, I think. But I just thought Eric Barton, those type of guys, you need that. I remember like when John Madden was announcer, like the Cowboys had like Billy Bates and these guys, like you would just hear it was just like his job was special teams. And so I hope there's some guys that really buy into that as much as we talk about who's going to be the returner, who's going to win that kicking job. Let's see some dudes go down there and stick some guys, knock a football loose, that sort of thing. And if he can get that sort of attitude and those sort of tone setters, it'll feed those units and it'll feed the entire team. And it'll make guys who aren't necessarily on the two deep feel like really involved in the program. And, there's an excitement to go into each week if you feel like I can change this game, even if I'm not the starting linebacker right now. So that's something I'm hopeful for.
So BC, I sit here and we all got excited when we remember the name Eric Martin, and we love the buy-in on special teams and what that means for a team.
I mean, Rigoni, Lansbury, there's been some guys.
And we all love those guys, remember those guys. But then I also sit here and go, okay, is any of that going to matter if they can't find a guy that can snap and kick the ball?
No, you got to have that too. Like I don't want to bypass one for the other. Like it's got to be that deal where let's have that kicker is 42-yarder. It's good. Like it's the 37-yarder, count it. You don't have to think long and hard because it's 4th and 5 and you just don't have confidence you're going to get it done with the kicker. So, that changes everything. We've seen it not only from Nebraska, sometimes inconsistencies, but then the teams they've played have seemed to make clutch kicks. Iowa's made a lot of clutch kicks against them with walk-offs and stuff like that. And, you could go back even in the Frost era, like Ohio State had a kid hit like a 50-some yarder that put a game at Memorial Stadium away when Nebraska had a chance for big upset. So it can make all the difference and can let your team off the hook too. And so I guess the most interesting thing on that part to me is it is a strange dynamic because Alvano was a scholarship guy, had the injury last year. John Hull got really hot at the end of last season. So everybody's kind of talking about him in December and January. Then it shifts back to Alvano now because he's the healthy guy through this spring. And so, it's just an interesting dynamic. I guess you chart it out, see who does the best, and make sure you've got the right foot that you feel is reliable and go with it. But that's going to be something to keep track on for sure.
BC, if this season goes the way that you think Nebraska wants it to, and you can only put your chips in one basket, are you taking? Was this going to be a team that you think can play consistent over time, or you would just prefer them to make the key? Will it be games played in such a way where it's close enough where you'll say, just make the key play when you have to make it? Which of those two scenarios do you think will be more apropos for this team?
What are the two options there?
Consistency all the time, or just make the key play when it presents itself. So there are a couple different scenarios, right? Yep. Are you going to be good enough to just be consistent, or are they going to be so close where it's going to come down to blank?
I want them both, but key play when it's you got to make it.
That's how they're going to be, right?
Yeah, I'd love to see this team live better in those moments than Husker football has in the past. And I feel like that's got to be the thing that knocks down this wall. Like it's got to be at one point in this year, there's got to be a situation where it's like tied or Nebraska's down 3 with 4 minutes left, 3 minutes, and they have that drive. They have that play, that catch, that something that you guys have seen it every time there's a last drive by Nebraska and it fails. You get the whole chart of like what it's been like the last 7 or 8 years on those drives. There's got to be something like that allows us to kind of move on from that narrative. And I think maybe allows them to as well. The good thing is some of those guys obviously weren't even involved in that. You got guys like Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter who are new here and, new players. So they're like, that's not even part of my history. So whatever. So that can be useful. But I do think it's going to come down to there's going to be some throws where it's like that's where Dylan's got to be elite. That's where his receivers got to win a contested ball, not let a DB pulled away from him in the end zone. It's a team game, but Nebraska probably beats Illinois if like Nair rips that ball away from the DB, that type of play. Or those are the ones that we talk about for months afterwards. So I think those definitely could be the separators for this team. I'd take both of your scenarios, though. Just a drumbeat of consistency has to at least set up the opportunities to make those plays to change games.
Kind of rapid fire. If you, in some order, go Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon at the top, right? I think that's kind of the consensus in the Big Ten. Maybe Michigan is up there. Indiana, I think people like what they did in the portal. Plus, they got a lot of portal guys coming back from last year. At first blush, is Nebraska above or below Illinois?
Above.
Above or below Iowa?
People think Illinois is going to be really good this year.
Yeah. I think they're above Iowa too. Yeah. I think go on.
Or below Minnesota.
I think they're above them too. I know this sounds like very homerish as I'm going through them, but I like Nebraska's potential better than all those other teams. This is what we always talk ourselves into the offseason, but
Above or below Washington?
above them, yeah.
Above or below Rutgers?
I'd say above them.
See, if they're all above those teams, you're talking about living in the fifth, sixth, seventh place. Let me give you one more. Above or below USC?
I'll say below, and they got to prove that one to me. I did think that was a game Nebraska gave away, though, so it's right there. USC and Illinois are the toughest ones you asked there. I really hesitated with Illinois.
See,
I'll say
I think there's two teams that are critical Nebraska is better than if they want to be in the hunt. And I think they both are flying under the radar. I think Minnesota may be better than we think. And I think Washington
okay.
is better than we think. I hesitate to go back to this because I said it last year and they were besieged by injury. Rutgers is built to have a good season too.
Yeah, and I'll go back to Minnesota. Minnesota is usually better than people will give them credit for in the offseason. They always end up, I think, being a tougher out. And that has been a bad place to visit for Nebraska football. So if you said, hey, what are two games that you would circle on the schedule? I'd circle Cincinnati. And because I've seen through the years, like how dark the clouds get immediately on a season if you don't go play well in that opener. But then Minnesota is the other one, just because every time I go up there and I sit in that press box, I have, bad memories of this or that, or Bill Moose saying, "Oh no," in the press box next to me, or the tripping at the 1 yard line. And so, and Minnesota tends to figure itself out enough to be, like I said, a tough out. They're not going to give stuff away to Nebraska. They never do. So I respect them. I always respect that program.
So if based on those last teams and kind of how as you're processing real time, does it change your answer about if you want consistency or reinforcing that you're going to have to make a few key plays?
I don't know that it changes my answer, but I do. You do have to have that consistency that those other teams have, but I still think it's going to be these moments where there's those couple of plays where it's like make it in the moment, and you can put this game on ice, or like I could go back to 2 years ago at Minnesota. That's a game, I guess, where you might just say, just be consistent to the finish line and you win it. But, make one more play in that game, have somebody do something special one more time and you win it. And so I don't know that it changes my answer, but it's a good scenario layout. Nebraska's got to get to that upper middle of this league and then work from there. And I think the opportunity is wide open for them to do it.
Is there another team you guys would have thrown in there that I'm missing?
Michigan State.
Yeah, that's a critical game.
Michigan State's gonna be a team everybody talks over, doesn't talk about as much as others on the schedule. When they get in the stadium, you look at them and be like, that's a tough.
That'd be more than just about Chillis, doesn't it? But that kind of seems the narrative.
That might be the inflection point.
I think he's a good coach. I think they'll be That'll be a tough game. That's why Rule and these guys always say this league's hard. It's the games like that people look over and they're like, "Oh, of course you'll take care of that one," or whatever. And it's like, no, it's not that simple. It's that's the type of game where you're in the whirlpool, all the next day. So they're a physical team, and they're going to look good on the field. Like, I thought that last year, UCLA, everyone's like down on them most of the year. They're scuffling. Before that game, you get down and you look at UCLA's roster. You're like, okay, lot of talent, a lot of 4-star, a lot of type of those guys out there. And the same with Michigan State.
Was it unfair that I put Michigan kind of in that 4 or 5 spot?
I think there's more unknowns there than we are giving them credit for.
Yeah, I'm curious how that quarterback situation is going to develop. I like this this could be a.
I know some people probably wanted me to put them in the. I slotted them in that top 4 or 5 group.
Do you like that Nebraska plays them earlier?
I do.
Yeah,
I
so do I.
play them as early as possible
Mm-hmm.
because I think they're going to have to really reload, and they can because they've recruited well defensively. I think they'll miss Loveland. Yeah, get them play them as early as possible. It's a big one. I mean that environment.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking Ringling Brothers, Barnum, and wait, are they still in? Whatever circus is still functioning, it's going to be that one.
Yeah. Set it up with that win at Arrowhead first, but yeah, that'll be a nuts. The place will be nuts for that one. So
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson, Husker247. BC, appreciate the time as always.
yep, thanks guys.
Thanks, Big.
Hope you get a hot dog on the turn soon.
All righty.